So we obviously faced a surge right at the inauguration, and everybody had hoped that we could return as soon as the new administration and the new council members were inaugurated, but we had to really react. And so we continued with virtual, and the team did an incredible job, and we trained everybody to make sure that all the new members were ready to go from a virtual perspective. But we've always wanted to be back in person, both from just an ease of work perspective, but also relationships. It's easier to build relationships in person. So we've really had a balance between the safety. We've continued to use masks. We've had a limited number of people who are allowed to be in the spaces for committee meetings and for regular meetings, but bringing people back and doing public meetings, doing public work sessions, really the work of the council being back in person. And so I think it's been really thoughtful about how we can stay safe, but also realizing that it's just an easier way to do business when you're able to do it in person. We worked very closely with the mayor and the administration to make sure from a city hall perspective, from a security perspective, from a logistics perspective, that all those things have been in step also as city hall has reopened. Yeah, as soon as the runoffs were over, I started meeting with each city council person individually, understanding what their interests were, what committees they were interested in serving on, overall what they were looking forward to, and also meeting with the new incoming mayor and members of the transition team. And then as we've gotten up to speed, we've had formal events. We had a formal get-together of all the council members, and the mayor came, which was just a way to socialize. It was the first part of our retreat. And then also more informal ways in which we've just continued to talk about issues, see each other at community meetings, and really, I think, spend time not only understanding each other's perspectives from a policy direction, but also just from a personal direction. And so there's just been a lot of time spent in these initial months to make sure that folks understand where everybody's coming from, and also just build that foundation of trust, which allows you then to make good decisions going forward. Sure. There are a lot of things that the council's been doing on the public safety perspective. One is personally going out and talking with APD forces, fire and rescue forces, citizens out in the field, attending lots of MPU meetings, lots of community meetings to really understand what's happening right now and what are the needs. There were obviously 4 public safety commissions, one in each quadrant of the city, that really link specialists and citizens with the public safety folks to understand in each quadrant of the city what are the things that residents really see as being helpful. We've created and supported more funds for the diversion center, which will allow an alternative to just arrest for folks, especially that are having mental health or substance abuse issues. We've obviously been talking a lot about recruiting, and the opening of Unity Place, I think, was a big step forward. Invest Atlanta, the city working together around a place for recruits to stay when they're in the training and their initial training. And then we've also stood up a comprehensive review of licensing and enforcement of liquor licensing. And I think this is a big part of public safety, because we've seen a lot of incidents happen around restaurants or nightclubs. And one of the key mechanisms is to make sure that folks are abiding by liquor licensing, and when there needs to be enforcement for rules being broken, that we're really making sure that that's being enforced. So there's a comprehensive review underway, and I anticipate that in the fall there'll be a comprehensive reform around that. And so we've been trying to do our part to make sure that the policies in place and the relationships are in place to make sure that we have a safe city. The new Center for Diversion is really an exciting initiative, because it crosses relationships built with Fulton County, with Grady Hospital, with the city, with APD. That really allows a place. It will be in the the historic city jail. Basically, part of it will be used as a place for folks to come to be brought when they really are having a mental health issue, when they're having a substance abuse issue. Heretofore, we've really only had the option of either doing nothing or arresting them as often kind of the default. And this really allows them to go to a physical place that has the kinds of services that can meet their needs. And so I think this will really allow a better outcome for the individuals, and it also will be a very good way to comprehensively put the programs around and offer. And this is also in conjunction with the mental health bill, which was just passed by the state legislature, which will expand mental health coverage and mental health services across the state. Atlanta's really going to benefit from that as well. And I think that that's been a gap. We really know that there are a lot more folks in mental health need than we have had resources before. before. And I think that both the diversion center and those new resources give us an opportunity to really serve folks much, much better going forward. Sure, so the budgeting process really will kick off at the April 18th meeting and then go through the final adoption in the end of June. Chairman Wan has already outlined that he's going to hold a work session just for council members, since we have so many new council members, so that everybody understands the overall process, understands how we're going to move forward with the contemplation and the adoption of the budget. There are also, I think, some very important issues to be tackled. One is the frontage fees. We know that issue needs to be addressed. The way that the frontage fees were being done was not actually legal, and so now we actually need to move forward in making that a better policy. So we know that as part of the budget process, there are going to be work sessions and eventual adoption of a new approach. But I think overall, it's really also making sure that the priorities around public safety, around equity, around affordable housing are ones that are going to be addressed in the budget, as well as city services. We know that we need city services to be working well and working efficiently, and so as part of the budget process, you'll hear a lot of questions about, do we have adequate staff, do we have adequate technology, are we doing maintenance to our equipment, all the things that allow city services to really be delivered in the right way. And then in conjunction with the budget process, we also know that in May, we have the T-SPLOS vote and the infrastructure bond vote. And those, if passed, would unlock hundreds of millions of dollars for specific infrastructure projects, sidewalk projects, speed table projects, all kinds of things that will really benefit folks on the neighborhood level. And so that also will be part of the discussion, because as we're talking about budgeting, we'll also talk about the possibility of those funds being adopted by the city, which really would be a boost to the kinds of investments we're trying to make around quality of life. Sure. So, you've seen council take some moves working in conjunction with the mayor's office around, for instance, investing in private companies picking up yard debris, because we were behind because of COVID around yard debris pickups. And so really saying, look, we know this is an important thing, especially as spring comes and everybody starts mulching and making sure their yards look good. We wanted to make sure that those services were in place. So sometimes it's been over investing. Sometimes it's really been trying to understand why things aren't necessarily working all that well. For instance, the 311 app is something that was beloved, but it's not working at the moment. So really trying to say, okay, is there an enabling technology that if we adopted or brought back, in this case, that would allow the city services to be delivered in a better way? And so I think in some ways it's tactical, and in some ways it's bigger kinds of investments. I mean, if we have streets that are flooding, it's hard for city services to be delivered very well. The mayor's talked about bringing back the pothole posse, but also that means if you are keeping up with your street repairs and your overall street repaving, you may have less potholes. So some of it is understanding where we as city services are reacting, and they should be, but some of it is being proactive or being ahead of a maintenance kind of agenda. And that's where something like the infrastructure bond and the T-SPLOS vote really are important, because they will allow us not only to be reactive, but to be proactive on some of the ways that we maintain our city. So the prior city council really went through a comprehensive development of the project list. And the project list is really aimed at every part of the city benefiting from investments that are needed, very tactical kinds of investments, practical types of investments at the neighborhood level that are going to make a difference, to make sure drainage is working, to make sure sidewalks are built, to make sure piping is in place so that we don't have flooding, to make sure that we have streets that have bike paths and that have pedestrian paths. So it really is a very targeted list that has been developed with a view to quality of life. I think that the infusion of capital, if passed from the bond perspective, would just allow us to really do that in a way that, because that project list is so practical, people are going to feel. They're going to feel on a daily basis in their neighborhoods when that's implemented. So I think in the first 100 days, we've tried to, number one, hit the ground running and develop the relationships given how many folks were new administration, and I think we've done that. I think folks have seen that. There's been a lot of camaraderie, but there's also been a lot of just communication, and I think voters really wanted us to communicate and to collaborate, and I think you've seen that spirit, and I think you've seen that in practicality. And I also have been really pleased that the council has started to dig into some really, really meaty issues, whether it's making sure that the housing opportunities for people with AIDS program program, the HOPWA program is working, or whether it's around licensing around alcohol licenses, or whether it's around making sure that city services are working. You've really seen existing veteran council members and new council members dig into that policy, and I'm really pleased to see that, because I think that's really what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be collaborative, and we're supposed to communicate with citizens, with the mayor's office, with neighborhoods, but we're also supposed to really make sure that things are working well. And I think you've seen this council really dig in, and I've been pleased with that over the first 100 days. So I think that as we move through the summer and the end of the year, the economy continues to open up. We have people who are going back to the offices. We have people who are starting to visit again the city. Tourism's coming back. And that means that the threshold for city services is really going to go up, right? We're going to have more people moving around our city. We're going to have more activity going on. That means we have to be even more diligent when it comes to public safety, when it comes to things like trash collection, when it comes to things like filling potholes. I think the expectations are going to start to rise. And so I think we have to be thoughtful from a council perspective. Are we funding things adequately? Are we asking the right questions? Are we making sure that we're able to deliver on the expectations that people have for us? I think that over the summer and the fall, as the economy continues to grow, I think we're going to see that. So that's really what I'm also focused on. The other is, I think that a lot of folks are interested in seeing change happen, and they think that change is possible. So they're reaching out in a lot of ways. I get Instagram direct messages, and I get Facebook posts that are saying, can you help with this? Can you help with that? That's great. But it also means that there are a lot of things out there that folks want addressed. And so I think that we also are going to see a lot more folks saying, hey, okay, I really can see the city on the move, and so please address this, please address that. And I think it's going to be incumbent on us to be responsive. I think as a council, constituent services, being responsive, making sure we're accessible is something that's going to continue to be really an expectation, and we're going to have to rise to that challenge. Yeah, I think you've seen and heard a lot about the efforts that have been made. The day after the runoff election, I was at the Fulton County Commission talking about wanting to work together. I went to the DeKalb County Commission virtual meeting to say the same thing. You've seen the mayor, you've seen me, you've seen members of council spend a lot of time across the street at the state capitol, but also in conversation with our county officials, our regional officials, because I do think that there's a real understanding as a part of all of us who have come in that those relationships matter. And even when we don't agree on everything, there are still a lot of ways to cooperate. There are still a lot of ways in which we can find solutions that involve multiple jurisdictions. And so there's been a lot of time spent in building those relationships or fostering those relationships. And I think that you're starting to see the fruits of that, some of the things that were passed, some of the things that were not passed at the state level. But I think you'll also start to see when it comes to federal funding, when it comes to new programs, you'll see that cooperation across jurisdiction really start to come to life. And I think the region and the city are both better for all of those efforts.